You realize, of course, that we could never be friends.
Why not?
What I'm saying is, and this is not a come on in any way, shape, or form, is that men and women can't be friends because the sex part always gets in the way.
That's not true. I have a number of men friends and there is no sex involved.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
You only think you do.
You're saying I'm having sex with these men without my knowledge?
No, what I'm saying is they all want to have sex with you.
They do not.
Do too.
They do not.
Do too.
How do you know?
Because no man can be friends with a woman that he finds attractive. He always wants to have sex with her.
So you're saying that a man can be friends with a woman he finds unattractive?
No, you pretty much want to nail him too.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, we grab a copy off that shelf, we pop it in our VCR, and see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Hola.
And together we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. So Mike, it's February.
Oh, yes.
Already. Every time the calendar turns over, someone's going to say, I can't believe it's February. I can't believe it's March. By the time this episode comes out, it's going to be around February 14th or so, and that's, of course, Valentine's Day, Mike.
Uh-oh, I better get something quick.
Yeah, this is the time of year where a young man's fancy turns to, love and other abstract concepts like that. Me and Mike have been married to our respective wives for over 20 years, so love doesn't really mean much to us anymore. But I'm supposing there's still a demographic that cares about this kind of thing, Mike.
All I know is if I don't get it something for Valentine's Day, I get in trouble still. So
yeah, me too. I'm still on the hook. It's interesting about how the fire 20 years of marriage can kind of take its toll on you. I asked my wife, my bride, I said, hey, can I take you somewhere nice for Valentine's Day? And her response was, I want to get this right, Micah.
That sounds like your wife. That sounds really, yeah.
So when I pressed her a little bit, to prove my love, I said, well, let's go somewhere and let's go out to dinner somewhere. And, so I got past the first hurdle, and then her next response was, where? so it's all conditional, right? So I'm like,
yeah,
Arby's, Christine. I'm going to take you to Arby's to show my love via Arby's. How does that sound all right? But that's kind of where it is after 20 years of marriage for me. But you're a little bit more of a romantic, Mike, and that's why I really applauded your decision to do a romantic comedy this time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest that this is kind of inside baseball for people out there. I don't watch a lot of movies. I know that comes. Wow,
I hired the right guy.
There you go. That's earth-shaking. The last piece of media I've watched, other than German Bundesliga soccer, is Batman and Robin. Okay. So I needed a palate cleanser. I needed something that was kind of the opposite of that piece of trash. This movie came to mind, and it's one of my favorite kind of Valentine's-y rom-com movies.
Yeah, so, when we started the podcast, we thought we'd go after, like, the big popcorn movies, and we didn't really invest a lot of time to thinking about these type of movies for whatever reason. They're easy to make fun of, but in order for us to do that, we would have to watch them. See, there's a catch, Mike. So
yes.
But, Hollywood has invested a certain amount of money to this genre for a very, very long time, and they seem to be very successful, so maybe it's time for us to loosen up a little bit and cover something like this. So I think you picked one of the better ones. This was pretty much tolerable for me. We're going to talk about When Harry Met Sally from 1989 this week, guys. So let's just jump right in. So this was directed by Rob Reiner, Meathead himself, Mike, who we know from such standout movies as Misery, Stand By Me, a movie we covered on our podcast a while back. No one listened to it, so you might want to give us a shout and listen to that one. That's a really great episode, you jerk. Go back and listen to that one if you can. We'd appreciate that.
Yeah, how dare I'm going to shame you into listening to that.
Yeah, how dare you. And this is Spinal Tap, which is, like, of course, a genre-bending, defining film. Just a great, great movie. It was written by Nora Ephron, very prolific Hollywood screenwriter. She's had 3 Oscar nominations to her credit. Also did comparable movies like Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail. Set a budget of $16 million and was released in the summer, July 14th, 1989.
Wow.
This movie really works on the strength of its 2 leads. Mike, you want to walk us through the cast and kind of get us started?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was just thinking they released them the bicentennial Bastille Day. That's crazy. Yeah, there's really 4 core members of our cast. We have, of course, how come, the effervescent Billy Crystal, who for me was my first memory of him as being on the show Soap.
Yeah.
And kind of cool. He played like the first gay guy or first, kind of gay character on a TV show that I can remember or think of.
70s, right?
Yeah, very prominent character on the show. And of course, he ended up coming on the Saturday Night Live and doing some interesting impersonations of Fernando Lamas and kind of a semi-blackface of Sammy Davis Jr., which I guess is okay since they're both Jewish. And then he started.
It's a hell of a loophole.
Then he started his movie career. We saw him in The Princess Bride doing that schmucky kind of character that he does occasionally. But in this movie and in some other movies like Throw Mama from the Train and City Slickers, he's kind of a everyday guy and kind of a Jerry Seinfeld kind of light character. And then he probably, for most people, became most famous for being the host of the Oscars. That was probably his biggest gig that I can think of. And
back when people wanted that job,
and then we'll forget movies like Mr. Saturday Night, which he got made fun of, and My Giant and stuff like that. Just a lot of schmaltzy kind of roles.
Yeah,
Meg Ryan is Sally in the movie, and who America's sweetheart there for a while. She's former Mrs. Dennis Quaid. I think she was, in a couple movies with him, like Inner Space and whatnot. First thing I remember her in was Amityville 3D. So,
that's right. She was
just a teenager. Yeah. That's the first thing I can remember of her. And she was in Top Gun. I did that, small role in that.
Was she Goose's wife?
Yes.
Ah, yeah.
That was it.
Widow. Spoiler.
Widow. Oh no! Don't give it away. But there are Harry met Sally. They're in the Harry and Sally. What I liked about this movie was the cast was kind of compacted. You didn't have to go in, with the hour and a half kind of running time. It's probably good they just focus on these 4 characters. Their 2 friends are played by Bruno Kirby. Him from. He was also in City Slickers with Billy Crystal, but he was Don Clemenza.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
That's right.
Godfather 2.
Young Clemenza,
Yeah, and he plays Harry's friend Jess in this movie, and I think he's a writer for New York they said New York Magazine, not New Yorker.
Not New Yorker, right?
Yeah, and then Meg Ryan's friend is played by Carrie Fisher.
Has she been anything I would know her from?
Blues Brothers. I think.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
thank you.
Postcards from the Edge, maybe.
That's it. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, I don't think she was anything else. She plays kind of a sex star, Marie, the friend, and she wants to get married, but basically anybody she can.
She was the Samantha here.
Kind of so, yeah. And she ends up with, Jess, the Bruno Kirby character. So and then I want to give a special mention to not really a cast member, but probably better behind the camera playing his music, and that's Harry Connick. He kind of provides a lot of the soundtrack of this movie, which I got to say is really good. There's something a lot of it are remakes, and you swear he's Frank Sinatra when you hear it and stuff like that. But he's a lot better than being on camera and being in Independence Day. But that's
do not diss Big Daddy.
Jeez, and this big fat cigar. There you go. That's the core cast right there.
That's a good roundup, Mike. Thank you very much. Just a couple other notes on that cast. So, really, Crystal was cast in this, of course, but he was also up with some competition with Tom Hanks and Albert Brooks. Were also in line for this. All friends of Reiner, of course. Crystal was 40 when he played this role. Meg Ryan was only 27. Other actresses considered for her were Molly Ringwald, and we'll get to her in a second, and Elizabeth Perkins. I think they cast this one the right way. What's interesting here is that you kind of alluded to it, how the structure of this film, one of the things I didn't notice my first go through here was how neat and structured this film is. It's very tight. It's got a real tight sequence to it, and it's kind of broken down into segments that I just completely missed on my first viewing way back when. It's intercut with these interviews with random couples, and those are real stories. All the stories were portrayed by actors here, which I thought was interesting. They seem very realistic to me.
Yeah,
these weren't people you just grabbed out of central casting, but they actually conveyed actual stories. Yeah.
Now that you say, I had no idea.
Yeah.
A couple of them actually did look like the real. Like this can't be actor. They're so good at this playing kind of awkward, like older couple. Like this can't be actor and actress.
Yeah. We'll get into some of their interludes here a little bit. I really understood how much it reinforced the themes of what this story was trying to tell. Some other things about the movie here, this may ruin it for you, Mike. I don't know, but it's essentially an autobiographical tale of Rob Reiner from his divorce from Penny Marshall. Harry's really based on his real life toils and tribulations from that first divorce. He was married to Penny Laverne, Mike.
Yeah, Laverne.
They were married for 10 years.
She dated Lenny, right? It's not Squiggy.
Hello.
Squiggy's the real catch, if you ask me.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm too far away to remember. But yeah, and then some other autobiographical stuff. A lot of the characteristics of Sally here are straight out of Nora Ephron's personality, especially the ordering bit, where she wants things her own way, everything on the side. That drove Reiner crazy when they're developing the film. He said, you've got to put that character trait into Sally, which I think is really funny. This is a pretty well-renowned movie. That there's a few famous scenes we'll kind of touch on. One is the famous scene in Cat's Deli. And there's actually, that table is still there, and there's a plaque on that table that kind of commemorates that scene.
That's cool.
That's very cool. We're heading that way. We should probably check that out. But yeah, that's kind of the backlog of the movie here. So this was like the last bit of the 80s here, Mike. I think we were probably seniors in high school when this came out in 1989. This was a kind of busy summer. This movie, as we mentioned, came out on the 14th, along with July 14th, along with License to Kill, James Bond epic. The week prior to this, you had Lethal Weapon 2 in theaters, as well as Weekend Bernie's, Mike.
Oh my gosh, that was 89.
Yeah, 89, big summer. Also, the following weekend, you had Weird Al Yankovic's film debut in UHF, starring a very young Michael Richards, Mike.
Wow, you know what's weird? I looked this the Seinfeld, the TV show, was released about the same time.
Yeah, the pilot came out this fall. Seinfeld Chronicles,
in 89.
Yeah, first one not that good, to be honest with you. You didn't see the trajectory that show would have from the first couple episodes, at least.
Right.
But this was a relatively big movie, but not the biggest. It was the 11th highest box office hit in 1989. The top 5 were, of course, Batman, that you had the previous month in June.
Oh yeah,
we talked enough about that. You had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade came out that summer as well. 89. Lethal Weapon 2, which I mentioned already. Rain Man was number 4. It was also won Best Picture that year. And it was rounded up by Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That was a pre-Barney Rubble, Rick Moranis.
Thank you.
Before he was sullied and spoiled. Yeah.
That's why he left acting.
Yeah. On the TV scene, we were watching Cosby and Roseanne. And, the legacy of those two says enough right there. They did age very well. We're also watching The Golden Girls, and I believe America's Funniest Home Videos premiered this year. I remember being a college freshman watching that show in our dorm room, thinking it was maybe the greatest thing we had ever seen before. No YouTube, man.
No YouTube. That killed AFV.
Yeah, a generation of crotch shots, finally, On the music scene, Mike, I know we always like to talk a little bit about music. We had Don't Forget My Number by Milli Vanilli.
I forgot them. I think they forgot they didn't use their real voices.
We had Hangin' Tough by New Kids on the Block. We had Right Here Waiting for You and Satisfied, both by Richard Marx.
This is going down hard.
I want to issue a statement. On a previous episode, I identified Richard Marx as Karl Marx.
Yeah, that was a good one.
But
actually, I let it go by because I thought you were being sardonic or like.
It was a bit, and
it was a bit.
You fell into it perfectly, Mike. So thank you. All right, and of course we had "Bat Dance" by Prince. And I'm going to stop that conversation right now because
Party
we could
Man.
spend,
Was Party Man in there too? I love that
yeah,
song.
we could spend the rest of the episode just talking about Prince's
Yeah.
Batman stuff.
Trust. I love that one
Trust.
too.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Some other stuff that was going on in 1989. This was the year famously that the World Series was interrupted by an earthquake.
Oh yes,
And
A's and the Giants.
both teams in the valley there were affected by that. AOL recorded their first "You've Got Mail" message. You've got mail, as well as "Welcome." Remember those, Mike? Those that was first uttered over the internet. Then made you feel welcome to the internet back then. It was
Yes.
like a little family you were joining.
Oh.
We were all playing the Sega Genesis. I bought one at Toys R Us and took it to college with me, and it made me the most instant popular guy ever on the floor of Carmen Hall. I'm a legend to this day as the only guy that had a Genesis, only guy that had a video game console in my college dorm. So there you go. Gas would cost you $1. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so
It was
that's
89 cents. I remember because I was a
yeah,
freshman in college at one
yeah,
time,
yeah,
at
and
least in South Carolina.
right, and you could throw all that gas into your brand new Ford Escort that you could buy
Mm,
for $10,000. Like, get you a brand new Ford Escort.
yeah. Beautiful.
Some of the foods we were enjoying, not only in the theater but just in general life, Mike. We had the Cool Ranch Doritos made their premiere this year, which what's better than a Cool Ranch Dorito? We were down in some Big League Chew. That was one of the most famous gums. The little pouch that you keep in your back pocket and just
You could pretend it was tobacco.
for dentist tobacco. Yeah, good habits there. We were drinking Ecto Cooler. Like, this was the High C citrus punch that was green.
Oh,
It had the
wow.
Ghostbusters logo. They don't make it anymore. And it was probably the most delicious thing ever. It was in a can of High C that you have to punch open with a metal can opener. Remember those?
Yeah.
Remember High C in cans? That was great. We were enjoying Pac-Man cereal for our breakfast. That was really good. You had Mr. T cereal as well. We saw Pee Wee Herman enjoy that, his movie.
I pity the poor fool who don't eat my cereal.
And the Candy Nerds was introduced, and it was one of the bigger ones in the theaters. So there you go. That was movie
Oh,
candy in
wow.
1989.
I wonder which
So
state has Nerds as their most popular movie candy
I don't know.
still.
I'm going to have to look that up.
Okay.
So we maybe get Molly off the shelf for having the worst sweet tart ropes for Alaska.
Sweet tart rope.
Who would pick sweet tart ropes for Alaska?
I don't know.
They barely have like meat and bread and milk in Alaska. How did they get sweet tart? They put that on a plane. All right, so that's sweet enough. So speaking of sickeningly sweet, Mike, we should probably get into this movie. What do you say?
Sure, let's hit it.
Mike, hit the button. So our movie kind of opens up with one of, like, I think 6 interviews with married couples. And it's interesting because the theme of each interview is kind of a precursor to what that chapter of the movie is going to be. So the first one is so at the love at first sight theme. Their older couple are talking about how they first met. He knew right away. Kind of just transition into the story. I think it starts in 77, and Meg Ryan's in college, and her roommate hooks her up with Billy Crystal to tandem to drive to New York together on a trip. They don't know each other. What I liked here, Mike, is they said it's an 18-hour trip. Last time I checked, Chicago to New York is maybe 12 hours tops.
This is 89. Maybe some of the toll roads, interstates weren't 6 lanes or 8 lanes even,
Maybe
I was more bothered by the fact they were at the University of Chicago, but then they end up driving through the skyline going north to south. So I was like, were they at Northwestern University? So I was, of course, being a geography nut, I was bothered by that.
Okay, well, it's understandable, Mike. But you get introduced to like all the core elements of these characters right away. You've got the cynical pragmatist Harry, who's got it all figured out, misogynistic, a little condescending, and you've got the sweet, innocent, naive, yet cheerful and great attitude of Meg Ryan, Sally, and she's instantly put off after some convincing dialogue about how they can never be friends. The scene kind of ends up where in Washington Square Park in New York, when they kind of say their goodbyes. And in the course of that trip, Harry starts to see that she's kind of interesting. He kind of develops some interest in her, but of course the trip kind of ends that, and the scene ends with them saying "Have a nice life." Then we jump to the next interview. It's about like the hit and miss after your first marriage. You introduce these two couples talking about how they went on and off for years, and it's again that kind of plants the seed of how the story is going to go. And it follows up 5 years later, where she's in an airport with her fiance Joe, and he's walking by. Randomly, Rock comes across her, and he recognizes Joe, and pretends like he doesn't notice her. It's kind of an agonizing thing for her to be reunited with this guy that she spent that agonizing 2 days with. But she's kind of establishing her life, and then he kind of goes back and remembers her, and that kind of sets the stage for the next one. Another 5 years go by, and she's established in New York, and I think she's in the media, right? She's doing the news, and she's having lunch with her friend Carrie Fisher, and we learned that she's broken up with Joe. We also learned that Harry has got divorced. He confides that to Bruno Kirby at a Giants game.
Yeah, Phil Simms and Mark Bavaro.
Yeah, which is actually at the Buffalo Bills Stadium, but we'll let that go. He's telling that story as they're doing the wave in between the story, which I think is really funny. Yeah. So there's another interview here where you get one of my favorite interviews where they cut to the two folks, the woman that finishes the man's sentences. Oh
yeah.
The theme of this interview is like true love was right there in front of them all along. So the next vignette of the story is kind of reinforcing that theme where this is like the friend phase where they become friends in New York. And what I liked here is just the scenery and the locales they shot at. It's just in autumn. In Central Park with all the orange leaves, and it's it was really just a beautiful cinematography here as well.
It's like the New York from Elf.
Yeah.
It was kind of a sanitized city, but it also showed it in its like the Chamber of Commerce kind of day.
Right. And there's some like montages here where they kind of establish their friendship and their bond, the platonic bond that neither one of them thought could possibly exist. And platonic is the key word here because they haven't developed feelings like that for each other yet, and it's kind of interesting. But there is a scene where they're at the batting cages where Harry reveals to Bruno Kirby that, hey, I've matured or whatever. He takes it as a sign of personal growth that he's become friends with a woman, an attractive woman, no less. But it kind of tilts the scales that maybe something's going to come up here. So. The next interview is with this older couple that talk about how we met across a crowded room. This is the guy named Smalls, but he announces himself as Smalls from the Coney Island Smalls. Like we're supposed to know that all the Smalls on Coney Island. Right? So again, it just kind of perpetuates the growing relationship they're fostering here, not realizing that they're developing real feelings for each other. And the last interview was interesting about the Japanese couple and this one was really about essentially an arranged marriage. But the movie kind of takes that theme, and they're trying to set up each other with their best friends, and it turns out that that doesn't work, and it ends up that their best friends actually go with each other. So Carrie Fisher bonds with Bruno Kirby, and instead of
they it's interesting because neither one of them, neither Harry or Sally, are happy with who they're dating, but they have to constantly tell each other who they are dating and what their what their faux pas are in each person they see.
Right. So this kind of culminates into the turn of the movie, and there's a scene here where Harry he sees his ex-wife, and that freaks him out because she's moved on with her life, and the same thing happens to Meg Ryan. She finds out that Joe, who broke up with because she didn't want to get married, he finds out he's getting married, and that just sets her off in this emotional blow up where she realized that it wasn't that he didn't want to get married, he just didn't want to marry her. And what you do in those situations is you call your friends and you vent. This is where, in a weakened moment, in her despair, she tells the story to Harry, and of course Harry's always been there, and they're embracing each other, and that's when they drop the first kiss, and they end up like sleeping together. And then that look on his face when he wakes up,
because he had already mentioned that he is not. He's a get up and guys like to just get up out and go. Girls
this is not his scene
afterwards. They.
But what was the dichotomy of that was so great. He's looking this genuine terror look, and then just to his immediate left, she's smiling like it's the greatest thing that ever happened. I think it's just that contrast there just really reinforced the themes, the conflicts of like a platonic relationship going bad, and what happens when you cross that line. And of course, then that rift, we have him leaving probably too soon. That convincing themselves that it was a mistake, but he's a little too quick to admit it.
Yeah, he was probably scared of all the penguin merchandise she had in the room.
That's a good point. But of course, that things got weird, Mike, as Dr. Evil would say.
Try the Hot Pockets. They're breathtaking. It got weird, didn't it?
Yeah. And so the balance of the third act is just, her kind of shutting him out and him slowly coming to the realization that she's the woman in his life. And of course, it happens on New Year's, Mike. And again, I want to call it a trope, but I think this movie probably invented a lot of these things.
I was watching it last night. I'm thinking the same thing. It's like, wait, I've seen this before. This
Yeah.
is, hey, wait, no, this was the first
No,
one.
they did it here first.
They
But
did it first.
he comes to the realization that she's the woman he was meant to be with his whole life, and he runs across Central Park to go to the New Year's Eve party that she's at, and confess his love. And of course, it doesn't go right, and it's not an immediate. She's still skeptical of him, but he explains to her in the only way he knows how, and because she's built this relationship, with him over the course of the movie, she understands that it's sincere. And then, so of course they
Yeah,
end up kissing on New Year's Eve. What I like is he won't even break character for a minute. Like the minute he has his catharsis, he questions the lyrics of Old Lang Syne. He goes, "What is this?" Yeah,
yeah.
just using that humor as a defense mechanism, but also kind of charming her and just making her really adore what he's become in her life. And then then the movie ends quite interestingly with them as the final couple that's interviewed, and it follows the same themes and tenets of all the previous interviews, and you kind of see how the generational things, how the transgression of the relationship and how the marriages go, and they end up sounding just like one of the previous five couples that gave their testimonial in the movie. That entire scene, Mike, was improvised. There was no script there. They just kind of made it up. And what I thought was extremely clever is Meg Ryan says a thing about she had the chocolate sauce on the side with the coconut cake, and then the screen fades to black, and then Harry Connick Jr. comes in and starts singing some more standards, and the movie is over. So there it is, Mike.
Yes, very good movie.
Very sweet, very
yeah,
even
sweet.
for cynical, snarky Gen Xers like us. It strikes a nerve. So let's talk a little bit about the awards and accolades. Then we're going to talk about all our feelings, Mike. So this movie had a $1 million opening. Again, this is a different time. It ended up doing $93 million domestically, but that did not have a worldwide release. So essentially a very big hit. It got an Oscar nomination for Efron for the screenplay, but she lost to Dead Poets Society that year.
Okay.
It got 5 Golden Globe nominations, all for the main players and the screenwriters, but they did not win any of them. You mentioned the soundtrack, Mike. I think this is one of the legacy of this film is it introduced a new generation to standards. A lot of these things were swing songs from the 30s and 40s, crooners, and Harry Connick Jr., despite all his flaws, really picked that up. He's not flawed as an actor, maybe, but as a musician, he's incredibly talented. And he captured lightning in a bottle by doing these standards and really just reinvented that genre for guys like Josh Groban and Michael Bublé and all those guys. Now it's pretty standard, no pun intended. It established the date movie template. Most romantic comedies now are derivatives of this screenplay. I think it's fair to say.
So true.
It's made several lists of romantic movies, movies you need to see before you die. Best romantic comedies list. It's been on just about every major list in the top 5. It got adapted to a stage play in 2004 at London's West End, starring Luke Perry and Allison Hannigan, Mike. Yeah, not very well received. Molly Ringwald, who we mentioned earlier, was up for the role in the movie, ultimately placed Allison Hannigan in London's West End for that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
As
of 2022, it was inducted into the National Film Registry, and we say that a lot, but that is a really big deal. You're recognized as a national piece of art. I mean, that's what more could you want from your film?
Yeah,
so.
It's top honors.
But this movie is like we mentioned, the prototype romantic comedy. It is the template for all which others have really been formed, and this was an interesting one to go back and look at, Mike, especially from a generational standpoint. The theme of this podcast is going back and reviewing things from a different perspective, and I did not expect the impact a romantic comedy would have on how my perception of a movie, but this one just was really huge. And so, Mike, I'm interested to see your take on it. So why don't you head off first and kind of talk about the grumpy meter here, what your perceptions of it as a younger guy and versus your most recent watch and what changed?
Oh, yeah, sure. I watched it, my freshman year in college at a little theater in Easley, South Carolina. It's one of those nights where you didn't want to do homework, and I just kind of drove on over and saw the movie. And I remember liking it at the time. By the time I saw it, it was probably September. So it had already kind of gained momentum. Like you said, it had kind of a slow opening, but I think it was one of those movies that like held over at a lot of theaters for a while just because, based on what it was competing with, there wasn't a lot of like romantic movies. Even at the time, you never heard the term rom-com, but this movie kind of, like you say, it was very well written, very tight. the ending of it is earned. You feel like it kind of was a slow burn. You know that you knew these two were going to end up together. That's the whole point of the movie.
Right.
But there still was this doubt, like, okay, they're going to like do like they did when they were at Washington Square Park, or they're just going to like, so not have a nice life at the very end of it. You still didn't quite know that, just based on how many times they had already kind of like.
I like how they did the callback there. Like he was at Washington Square Park, that place where he saw her the first time when he made the realization that he had to go back and find her. You know, so it was cool. Yeah,
they had a lot of neat little scenes like that. Even one of my favorite scenes was after they had sex and they both were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe we did this." They both had to call their friends.
The split screen stuff, yeah.
Jess and Marie, yeah, and they're talking to both of them at the same time. That was a really cool scene, and it's like one of those. That's pretty innovative,
Took I think 60 takes. They said to get.
I
that
can
right.
imagine. Yeah, it had a lot of timing in it.
Right, sure.
And they'll have like the fake orgasm scene, which is now lives in infamy. Where they're at the diner and she's like, trying to show that Harry that. Not all the times those girls were with you were they,
that scene's infamous for all the reasons you mentioned, but it's also from a narrative standpoint, that's the first kink in his armor. That's when she bests him for the first time, and you can tell that character's never had that happen to him before, and I think that's the first crack in the dam. But
it was well crafted, and it works because the whole theme of it is carried through with the whole. If you're attracted to somebody, you can't be friends with them, and it ends up being true at the very end. And it was weird watching this, and nowadays in 2024, and having all these other shows behind us like Seinfeld and Friends, other shows that kind of show New York, and like I said before, kind of the sanitized New York, but. It was so closely related to Seinfeld. It was almost eerie, the way Jerry Seinfeld and Billy Crystal were very similar kind of characters. Even, like you were saying, riffing about all anxiety can be played and like,
You just had the most romantic, emotional part of your whole life.
And he breaks into a Seinfeld kind of stand-up routine.
Yeah,
it's like, okay. But even, I don't know if you caught this, but even the guy who played Bizarro George had a brief role in this movie. And I was like, hey, that guy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was in it. And just the whole grouping and the interaction between the characters, like, Jess was almost like a George kind of character, trying to just get a relationship with anybody and playing the sidekick to Harry. But on its own, it's still held up as a good movie.
Yep.
It's another one of those kind of pioneer movies we keep kind of finding from the past. It's like, you know what, you should watch this movie instead of everything that came after it. Like, You've Got Mail and other Nora Ephron movies, but this was probably the peak of her powers, I would say, as far as
the standard
writing.
I think you're right there, Mike, because there's nothing in this story that doesn't hold up, for being 30 years old or whatever, 35 years old now.
If you have a good theme, it's going to live on for forever.
Yeah, all right, that's a great take, Mike. So I'm the same way. I didn't see this in the theater, but I think I watched it with my then girlfriend on VHS, that fall at school. And I'm watching this as a 19-year-old kid, and none of the stuff that I mentioned in the half hour talking about the film I even picked up on. I think I just saw it for what it was. It was just what boy meets girl. I wasn't complex enough to see all the layers of the story and all the. It wasn't
until you just told me about the interviews of the couples that it reflected what was going to happen, the action on the actual movie.
It's like a precursor to everything. Yeah, I didn't see that either. No. I just thought, they're just talking to people about marriage. So then,
it's clever as hell, but like I said, it was almost subtle and subconscious.
So, of course, you're not emotionally mature enough to notice a lot of these things at 18. You don't go through these trials and tribulations. I hadn't been dumped yet, and I hadn't experienced real loss or things like that. So those things, just the pain of being alone and trying to find your soulmate or whatever it may be, the driver of the story just didn't hit home with me. But watching it now after years and years of emotional tribulations that we go through, everything hit home. They're like, oh, I know how that feels. I know how it feels to be rejected. I know how it feels to be all those things that the characters are going through. I think there's a lot more resonance to it now, but missing, I see it with a new sentiment. I know I don't miss dating anymore, but yeah, I'm a little more perspective of it now because I have that frame of reference. But and I think I appreciated the story a whole lot more because I got personal experiences to kind of base things off of and benchmark emotional ties to. So, but again, how cute is Meg Ryan? And she was like, ideal for the role. Just a naive enough, but innocent enough, but grounded to be like, just a perfect foil for Billy Crystal. He was really good in this movie. That could have gone really sideways if that, if he didn't.
Yeah, he was almost great. He was almost
Yeah.
grating in a way. There was,
He could, he could have been very annoying. He could
Yeah.
a very unlikable character if he kind of pulled it off wrong, but he manages to deliver here. So.
Yeah, it was not a polished performance in any way. Like there were parts where it just seemed to like shift from second to fifth gear. Sometimes you're like, okay, wait, why? He's a neat freak. Why is he doing that? And it just different things were kind of like, okay, but like you say, it was a. I'm glad he was kind of toned down. It wasn't, I don't know if Tom Hanks would have been any better. It's hard to imagine. You almost have to have a New York guy like you said, Albert Brooks.
Yeah.
Do that kind of role. It is no other way you could pull that off of just an everyday, guy or Midwesterner. It had to be somebody with that kind of snarky New Yorker kind of.
Yeah, and again, I think the strength. I mean, it's all there on the page. I think the strength of the script really kind of error-proofed this. I mean, it was really just so well written and so well structured and directed that it made me actually like a romantic comedy. So, speaking of that, Mike. So for this week's installment of You Just Made the List, Pal, we thought your grumpy boys would go in and force ourselves to look at this genre that we often scoff at, often ridicule, and try to find 3 romantic comedies that we actually like. So, Mike, why don't you go first? Let's pick 3, and then we'll go with
3 good ones. You say
end of your third one. Maybe add some honorable mentions. Mike, you're up.
Let me go in chronological order. These. Believe it or not, these 3 came to mind like almost within 2 minutes of thinking about it. There's so many rom-coms out there, but these aren't necessarily rom-coms, but they're romance movies that have comedy in them. So semantics. Yeah. My first one is from 1977. It would be Goodbye Girl.
Oh, nice.
It was a movie based on a play by Neil Simon. It has Richard Dreyfuss and Marsha Mason in it. It's it's a movie set in New York, and it's really funny because it was she is based on the fact that she and her daughter are kicked out of their apartment by this Lothario husband, and he just leaves and goes to Europe, and their apartment is given to this guy that's a struggling actor, Richard Dreyfuss, and it's one of those kind of they don't like each other for a long time. It works out to be a great play, but it as a movie it works too, and I enjoyed it. It was one of those movies I saw when I was small, and every time I think about it, it just makes me smile. And of course, they end up together at the end, even though they're button heads most of the movie. It just has a lot of just comic, and anything written by Neil Simon, I'm kind of a sucker for. But that one I liked, and even the title song by that goon from Bread, David Gates, was really good. So
very nice.
That would be it. Goodbye Girl from 1977. Watch it.
That's a really good pick, Mike. So mine's going to be in no particular order here. I'm going to fall on my sword here for everybody. So I didn't think I could find anything, and then I realized that, well, damn it, Justin, there's hundreds of good movies that I found a hard time just whittling it down to 3, and I realized that I've been kind of unfairly biased toward this genre for a long time. My initial thought is most romantic comedies aren't funny, but then you actually sit down and do a little research. You're like, hey, stupid, just
if they're if they're handled the right way or by the right screenplay writers, they're
I'm really embarrassed that I didn't put myself for this genre, so I'm going to out myself a little bit here. So here's one of the plethora of movies that I could have picked from, but the first one's going to be Groundhog Day. Topical, right, Mike? So starring Bill Murray, of course. It's directed by Harold Ramis, and you got Andy, help me with that. I can't remember her name.
McDowell.
Andy McDowell. South
Carolina's own.
Gaffney's own, right? Yeah. but he goes to cover Punxsutawney Phil. He's a kind of grizzled, narcissistic, not too far away from Harry, really. And he keeps living the same day over and over. And it's a neat little premise movie, but he's stuck. He's reliving the same day, and he uses that day after some suicide attempts to develop feelings for Andy McDowell, who's just cute with her little Southern accent, and it's just there's interesting elements here where he starts out comically mean, then he goes comically funny, and then he goes straight man for a while, especially like the subplot where the homeless guy that dies on him, and he realizes that he has to make some sort of change to make this day go on to the next day. He feels he's been cursed. And ultimately what it is about, becoming a good person and finding love and being selfless and doing all that. I mean, he does that. And the romance here is great because he gets to try out everything to see if it works. And then he learns from his mistakes after I think there's 28 days total he lives here in a row. After about 28 days, he finally figures out, quit playing games, just be honest with Andy, and he, gets the girl. But at its core, it's a romantic comedy. Probably a comedy first, but that's my first one. It's a great movie, Groundhog Day.
Yeah, I can't get that polka song out of my head, and Ned Ryerson getting punched in the face.
The Pennsylvania polka.
Yes, the
Punxsutawney Phil.
Yes.
Off to see the groundhog, Mike. All right, let's move on to the next one, Mike. What you got?
All right, the next one's from the '80s. I went with Romancing the Stone, which on its surface is not really a romantic comedy, but hey, it's got romance in the title. The guy gets the girl at the end, and it's actually a very funny movie. And it's it has Danny DeVito in it, so it's got to be funny, right? But yeah, it has Michael Douglas and the very attractive Kathleen Turner, who gets wet a lot in this movie. Yeah, but yeah, she's off to help. Well, she needs
to be fair,
help.
It is the jungle, Mike.
It is the jungle. It rains a lot. Okay, it's Colombia, and she's off to find her sisters being held hostage by these two baddies who are really idiot brothers.
Yeah,
and Michael Douglas is kind of this adventurer, Indiana Jones kind of character who shows up to help her find this help her deliver this treasure map. And it's a great movie. It really is. I want to watch now. I wanted to watch it again as soon as I thought about it because it's worth seeing. Don't watch Jewel of the Nile. That's crap.
Okay.
But even and it's like I say, it's even has a good title song, just like Goodbye Girl. It has Romancing the Stone by Eddie Grant. How can you go wrong with that? but anyway, romance comedy, Romancing the Stone, 1984. Go enjoy.
Great pick.
Thank you.
So mine's going to be a little. This is my kind of off-kilter pick here, but this was a movie I saw, a relatively new movie that I was sort of impressed by. I don't know if I probably watched it again, I wouldn't be as enamored by it, but I was really impressed by 500 Days of Summer. Jonathan Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel. He plays a greeting card writer that falls hard for Zooey Deschanel. It really hits common romantic themes, especially modern romantic themes about what you do on dates, and the beauty part of the first times of the relationship, and it really guts you with when things aren't working and their relationship ultimately erodes. What I like here about it was very honest. There's opportunities here for them to get back together several times here, but it never came to fruition. Just like real life. And what I like, it was kind of a bold, kind of brave way to tell this story where you don't always get the girl, and sometimes the girl gets away. It's really about his despair, about losing who he thought was his soulmate for life, just the agony of it, and the ultimate humor and empathy that comes out of the story was really kind of clever. And so for a modern movie, I was pretty impressed. So that's 500 Days of Summer.
That's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Let's do your final pick. Maybe Mike, throw in a couple honorable mentions.
Wow, shoot! I didn't think of any honorable mentions. I apologize
fair
for
enough.
that. Like I said, these three movies came to me, and just this like the stream of. It was like it's like Robert Plant writing down his lyrics to "Stairway to Heaven" on a napkin, in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, my third one is from the 1990s, and it's My Best Friend's Wedding from 1997.
Oh wow! Was not expecting that.
A movie I thoroughly enjoyed. I didn't think there was a Julia Roberts movie that I would love as much as I love this movie. again, it's one of those. It's kind of like When Harry Met Sally. It's based on the fact that these two are friends. Our two principal characters. But
Yeah.
Julie Roberts finds out her friend, played by the slightly bland Delmont Mulroney, was getting married, and the rest of the movie, she spends trying to keep him from getting married, basically, to Cameron Diaz. And it's hilarious. It blew me away how funny it was. And what carried the movie was her friend, played by Rupert Everett, who's like this gay British guy, and
Real stretch.
he steals the movie. He really does. And it kind of like When Harry Met Sally again. The soundtrack really blows you away with the songs they sprinkle in. A lot of it's, instead of standards from the 40s and the 30s and 50s, it was songs from the 60s, which I really appreciate. But
Yeah.
the way they're incorporated in the movie are really clever, and it was really well done. And like I say, it has one of those casts you're like, that guy, it had a really kind of a famous cast, and
Right.
I was impressed with Julie Roberts. She's Pretty Woman, of course, is good, but this was, for me, was like just even more clever, because it was one of those movies where the guy gets the guy and the girl don't end up together at the end of it, and she realizes that, and it's kind of a like a character arc in the movie, and really well done. So, My Best Friend's Wedding from 1997.
I like that pick, and I like the way that story goes, because, again, my last pick too, it defies what the audience is there for. It's a very brave take on these things. When you go see a romantic comedy and the protagonists don't get together,
right?
Your audience is going to feel betrayed.
I know.
If you don't do it right. So that's a great pick. So
yeah, it was, like I said, the way it ended. She learns more about herself than anything, and it's,
like a grown up thing.
She matured. That's right.
Smyrna, Georgia, right? Just right down the road.
Yes,
down the road from us too.
We got Andy McDowell and two Southern girls.
Southern girls. All right. My final one. Speaking of grown-ups, I've loved this movie forever. I saw it as a young kid, and even at an immature age and comprehension of film, I just thought this movie was great. It's going to be Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks. This is, I think it was mid '80s. This came out, Mike, and I think I saw it on HBO, staying up too late to watch something, and one of my favorite comedies ever. But there's a romantic element to this thing that just really sells it. And for those not familiar, it's the story of Albert Brooks. He dies while listening to Barbra Streisand in his convertible, and he gets the afterlife. The premise of the movie is, in the afterlife, you get to spend time at a tribunal to see if you can move on to the next plane of existence. And it's really, for most people from Earth, their big thing is they have to overcome fear. So Albert Brooks has to go back and literally a trial in a courtroom, and he's defended by Rip Torn, great actor, defending why he should go through. And Albert Brooks has been neurotic his whole life, and he's never really found love. And during the afterlife, in between trials, he meets Meryl Streep, who, of course, wonderful in this film, just like every other film she's ever been in. But the premise here is, like, in the afterlife, he finally meets someone to fall in love with. And of course, she's guaranteed to go through. She died in a house fire saving a bunch of children, so he knows that he's only got a short amount of time to actually make that happen. And one of the things that actually wins his trial for him is that he faces his fears and goes through and opens himself up for love. And then Rip Torn kind of uses that as for the tribunal to get him to be able to move on. But just a series of amazing scenes with and great dialogue. Albert Brooks is probably one of the funniest guys on the planet, and just there's scenes here with Meryl Streep that are just comedy gold, and just a very heartfelt thing that it's, again, not a traditional romantic comedy per se, but I think fits the borders very nicely. So that's my next pick. So there you go. There's some other movies in here that I had like 20 here, Mike, and I could not believe that I had such an affinity for romantic comedies. But I was thinking, like His Girl Friday, like all those 30s rapid fire dialogue things with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn and all those guys, and Arsenic Old Lace, Notting Hill, I was a big fan of. Just some movies we've done, like Princess Bride. I mean, that's how great a romantic comedy is that. The Four Weddings and a Funeral, kind of along your lines. Annie Hall. I mean, these are all great movies that are romantic comedies that I just I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't notice. So there you go. Well, so speaking of embarrassing things, we've gone too far. We've already pushed our limit here again, Mike. We keep saying we're going to make these shorter, but it's just not working.
Oh no, yeah.
So
we're up against it.
Just a few notes for our listening nation here. You can check us out on Instagram. We're at Grumpy Nostalgia. Check out some of our videos and our reels, and you always find out what's going on with the show there. We have a YouTube channel that's kind of fired up now, so all our audio podcasts are on there, and I'm still beating around the bush trying to get some more video content down there, but trust me, it's coming. But you can check us out at work on YouTube. You can check us out there as well. Me and Mike are going to be visiting New York City next week. If you're going to be in the Midtown area or maybe the East Village for a couple hours, you like to find us, we'll be hanging out there. Shoot us an email. We're going to go see Headbang and Mosh Pit, and we're going to go see a play on Broadway like Grown Ups, and we're also going to see the Two Towers, the Radio City Music Hall. So we're going to spend a weekend in New York. If you're in that area, give us a call. We'll go hang out and you can meet your idols.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for me, Mike. Anything else you want to say to our team before we head out of here today?
Yes, do not watch Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, or New Year's Eve.
Yeah. Engage yourself in baby fish mouth. It's sweeping the nation. All right, so for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time.
That's disgusting.
I know, I feel terrible.